Basketball fans, welcome back. So about a week ago, the BAL came to a close. The new champions, Petro de Luanda, they got their first title in 4 years. And they've never missed any BAL season, and they got their first title in 4 years. And let's just talk about it. So I've made a lot of videos talking about the BAL, but in this one, I just wanted to do something comprehensive so that we can be able to just trace and just go back to what really happened, all the way from the Kalahari Conference, the Nile Conference, the Sahara Conference, all the way to the playoffs. And also I'll just mention the events prior, because in previous videos I've talked about what happened in Road to BAL. And if you've been looking at my Closer Look series in BAL Season 1, 2, and 3, you'll see I've also been mentioning that. But all in all, this, I must say, was a very successful season. And BAL Season 4 was very surprising, and it was just a shocker for me. And the games got increased, and there was an expansion in the games, and the total games for the season were 48. And the format changed a bit because, given the fact that there was a new conference that the BL introduced in the Kalahari Conference, that means that there are 3 conferences and 3 venues that are going to be played before the playoffs, and there are only 4 teams per conference. Then we had the whole Dynamo situation where they censored the Visit Rwanda jersey. I talked about it. It was something that was very controversial at the time, and it led to them getting suspended, and they eventually got knocked out in BAL completely. And right now, as we speak, their league has been suspended by FIBA. So FEBABU suspended them, but that's just as a side note. But there was a format change because there were 3 conferences. The BAL decided to seed the games, to seed the teams based on their record. Then they had to play classification games before going into the playoffs. So the 1 and 2nd seed, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams, they had to be put ranked record wise. And for classification games, if it's number 1 and 2, they have to fight it out for the 1 and 2 seed. So the winner gets the 1 seed, number 2 gets the 2 seed. So it was a detail. I didn't cover in the previous videos, but I made a video talking about it prior to the playoffs. But looking at the teams that directly qualified, we had they qualified for BAL Season 4. As I mentioned, we had Alali, we had Petro, US Monastir, APR, AS Downes, and the River Hoopers. And we had the 6 teams that went through the gauntlet. That is the Road to BAL. We had Bangui Sporting Club, FUS de Rabat, Alali Benghazi, City Oilers, Cape Town Tigers, and Dynamo. So these guys went through the gauntlet and they emerged victorious. And the team that I must say, despite what they did in the BAL, was Dynamo. Dynamo was a team that went through that gauntlet, and they finished in the number 3 spot in the Road to BAL, and they were able to grab that ticket. And we all know what happened when they went to the BAL. They had that whole jersey controversy. I'm not going to cover that in extent. I'm going to leave the link to that video in the description so you can go check that out. But we had a lot of surprises, especially when it came to the FUS de Rabat team finishing number 1 seed in the Kalahari Conference and also beating Petro. We had the Alali Benghazi team. I didn't have a lot of expectation on this team, but what they did in the BAL playoffs was just regular season and playoffs was just commendable, and they finished runners-up. And the MVP, Joel Lual Ausil, came from Alali Benghazi, and he finished runners-up with his Alali team. 3rd place, we had River Hoopers and Cape Town Tigers. Cape Town Tigers, they were a team that I didn't even think that they were going to go that far, and they finished number 4. I felt like they were a first-round exit at best, but anyway. I mean, I had teams above Cape Town Tigers. I had US Monastir, I had APR, I had AS Downes. I had teams that are ahead of the Cape Town Tigers. And also at Alali, the defending champions, I felt like they were ahead, but Cape Town Tigers, they were just the gift that kept on giving, and they went ahead and finished number 4. So that was something that was very, very good. And those are the teams that participated there. And looking at even the whole process, like teams had to go to the Kalahari Conference. We had FUS de Rabat, Petro de Luanda, Cape Town Tigers, and Dynamo. And the conference games started March 9th to 17th March. So the Road to BAL happened last year, and I must say it was it was so exciting to see those the teams that fight for those tickets. But fast forward to the Kalari conference, and it started in March 9th. I covered every single game, but I must say there were a lot of shockers. I was expecting Petro de Luanda to dominate the Kalari conference, but they were not able to dominate that much. And these games, the in the Kalari conference, the only reason as to why it only recorded 4 games is because Dynamo withdrew because of the whole Jazzy situation. So there are only 3 teams, and they only had 4 games. So if Dynamo were there, we would have had a total tally of 6 games. So the games were cancelled for the Dynamo team, which eventually costed the other teams. We costed teams wins, but FS Darabad did not disappoint, and they went ahead and beat Petro de Luanda in the first game, and Cape Town Tigers beat Petro de Luanda. And I feel like that was the stroke that broke the camel's back and led to Coach Jose Neto getting fired. I know Coach Jose Neto, he was a very good coach, and his methods were not the best, especially with the Kalari conference when he was doing things in there. And and a lot of people had a lot of questions, more questions than answers on his tactics. And another coach got brought in, and man, the rest is history. They went ahead and won it. But in the Kalari conference, their performance was quite underwhelming, but they had a 500 record, and they were able to advance in the playoffs. And in the Nile conference, we had the Alali Benghazi team. We had the Alali, the defending champions. They were playing at home. Cape Town Tigers defended home court. They were defending home court because it's in the Kalari conference. They played in Pretoria. Then in the Nile conference, the Alali team from Egypt were playing home, and the Alali Benghazi team from Libya were there. Bangui Sporting Club and City Oilers were there. So one interesting thing that I saw when these games all happened, when the last game of the Nile conference happened, the Cape Town Tigers were able to sneak into the playoffs. So Bangui were not able to have a very good point differential to be able to get them into the playoffs, and they had to wait for the result of the Sahara Conference, which was, I must say, very competitive, and it was good. I must say, both Alali teams from Egypt and Libya went ahead and advanced, and in the Sahara Conference, Bangui were just they were just in an imaginary team waiting to see the result of the Sahara Conference to see if they have a very good point differential that is better than the 3rd seed in the Sahara Conference. But unfortunately, they were unable to make it, and they went home. So Dynamo went home because they withdrew. Bangui Sporting Club went home because they finished with despite the fact that they had a 3-3 record, they didn't have a very good point differential to get them to the playoffs because it was very competitive. Following the comeback of the US Monastir team, if the US Monastir team slipped up in the remaining 3 games in the Sahara Conference, Bangui would have been able to get in there. Then another disappointment was APR, and I must say this was actually something that I even saw that it was puzzling. So the Sahara Conference, the Nile Conference, and the Kalari Conference are zoned. So to be very fair and accurate, FS Darabat was supposed to play in the Sahara Conference. The APR team was supposed to play in the Nile Conference, or either the Nile or the Kalahari Conference. But because the playoffs are supposed to be in Kigali, Rwanda, the BL decided to put FS Darabat, a team that hails from North Africa, in the Kalahari Conference. It was so funny. It was so funny to me. They did that swap because they thought that a Rwandan team will make the playoffs, but unfortunately that plan very much backfired, and it didn't even mean anything because even in the playoffs there was no Rwandan team in the playoffs, so that venue was just there for the better teams. APR were a disappointing team, and it was a very poor performance coming from that side. So we had the River Hoopers dominating the Sahara Conference. AS Downers finished number 2, and they come back by US Monastir number 3. I went in too much detail in these games, especially game-wise, statistically, and in the videos I made, because I was just covering and just dropping videos per game. So I went ahead and just talked about everything that happened, and I was very much happy to see these games happen. And honestly, the part that I really liked the most was the the seeding games, the change that they added. The BL added more games. Then the ranking for the third place teams, because that's another aspect that a lot of people were not able to understand, because given like there were 4 teams per conference, the number 1 and number 2 seed or in the per conference were able to advance immediate. They're able to have a ticket to advance, but the third place teams, you had to be the best out of the. You had to be the best of the third place teams, the 1 and 2 third place teams, to get it there. So, I mean, the US Monster team were able to pull it off with that massive comeback, and the Cape Town Tigers were able to do it. Then in the playoffs, there was that seeding game. There were those seeding games that happened. Alali versus FS Darabat. So FS Darabat stole the 1 seed from Alali. Then we had the Ace Downers stealing the 3rd seed from the River Hoopers. Then we had the Petro de Luanda team losing the 5th or 6th seeding places. They lost the 5th seed to US Monster, and US Monster grabbed the 5th seed. Then the Alali Benghazi team, they went ahead and got the 7th seed. So the Alali Benghazi team, as a 7th place seeded team, were able to go ahead and make the BAL finals. And I must say it was something that I never saw it coming, because all my expectation was to see if the Alali team from Egypt if they were going to be able to go ahead and defend their title. But unfortunately, they're not able to do that. FS Darabat got upset in the first round. Despite being a 1 seed, they got upset by the 8th seed. Then we had Petro de Luanda knocking off the Esdones team in heartbreaking fashion. This game ended 66-65. In that FS Darabat versus Cape Town Tigers, that game ended with a 3-point differential, 91-88. So those were very, very close games, and they were very clutch games. And these games would have gone either way. Then we had the Alali versus Alali Benghazi team. Alali got knocked off in the first round, a team that I expected to go ahead and try to even make it to the semis, couldn't even make it. Then you have the River Hoopers versus US Monster. US Monster just got knocked off in the first round, and it was just a heartbreaker because this game was decided by 4 points. Then in the semis, I just knew for a fact that if US Darabat team were beat by the Cape Town Tigers the way it happened, I just knew Petro de Luanda just had a clear path to the finals. And that game was so close, and it was such a grueling game that Petro de Luanda had to play. And that game, Petro de Luanda were able to go ahead and do it, and they finished them off in overtime. Even the Cape Town Tigers game went to overtime versus FS Darabat, and Petro de Luanda were able to find themselves in the finals, right back where they were in BAL Season 2. Then in the other side, we had the River Hoopers getting eliminated by the Alali Benghazi team. I must say, I didn't have too much expectation of the Alali Benghazi team, but they kept shocking me every single time. But Petro de Luanda, this was their year, because last year was supposed to be their year, especially when they had Solo Diabate and Aterma Jock. I felt like that was their year, because in the games that they played in the regular season, they finished number 1 in the Sahara Conference. They finished number 1. Then when they went ahead and played, when they went ahead and played in the playoffs, they got knocked off in the semis. But this was their year. The MVP of the tournament did not even come from the winning team, the Petro de Luanda team. And another interesting fact was, even in the teams, the BAL team selections, the first team and second team, I did not see a Petro de Luanda player being featured, so that was something that was a shocker to me. And I must say, I did not expect that I don't expect that, because I thought that the BAL first team should have had at least a player from the team that won the championship, but unfortunately that didn't happen, because Christopher Crawford, he got in the BAL first team. We had Will Perry, Sam Kelosele, Joel Alcil, and Alu Diar. In the BAL defensive team, we had Solo Diabate, Abdullahi Haruna. You had Sam Kelosele, Alu Diara, and Joel Alcil. So Joel Alcil was just grabbing all awards, because he grabbed the MVP award, he grabbed the Defensive Player of the Year, Joel Alcil. This man was just everywhere. Coach of the Year came from the River Hoopers, Ogo or Daoud. and the sportsmanship award, it went to Will Perry, and the Ubuntu award is to be announced, and you're just waiting on that one. But looking at even the points per game, rebounds per game, Joe Lual Ausil from the Alali Benghazi team, he scored 21.1 points, and he recorded a game high 45 points, and that's the most points scored in a single game in a BAL game in BAL history. So this man was just, setting up records. I don't know if that record is going to be broken anytime soon, but we just have to wait for BAL Season 5. Then the rebounds per game, we got Kalman Malwach. This man is just good. And he had 13.5 boards per game. The assists per game, we had Chris Crawford from US Monastir. This man disappeared in the first 3 games in this conference for the US Monastir team, but he was able to find his game, and he was able to go ahead and wheel that team to where they needed to be in the playoffs. Because last year they missed the playoffs because of that point differential. They couldn't make it after winning that championship, and they just needed to go back to the playoffs to show that they just still got it. Then the steals per game got Abdullah Haruna from the Isdanis team, and he averaged 4 steals per game. So this guy was just picking up pockets from the team, from the other players, from the other teams, and he was just good. And in the blocks per game, we had Abdu Endoy from the Cape Town Tigers with 3.5 blocks per game. And in minutes per game, Rolly Fulanganga from Bangui Sporting Club, he averaged 37.7 points per game. Alo Diarra, he finished with the best field goal percentage at 66.7%. Billy Preston from the Cape Town Tigers, he finished with 50% 3-point clip, and he was just sensational, especially when he was knocking down them threes. It was 50%. Will Perry, he finished with a 92% free throw percentage. So just as a rundown on what happened in BAL Season 4, and I must say this season did not disappoint, because if you've been following this channel, you'll notice that we covered every single game, and honestly I was just happy. In the third place game, I didn't look into that much because that much because my eyes were just drawn in that championship game, and it happened, and I was so excited to see Pedro de Luanda grab it, because after they fired Coach Jose Neto, I just felt like Pedro de Luanda were just in the abyss, and when they got their new coach, they were able to go ahead and get over that hump, because in BAL season 1, Pedro de Luanda, they finished number 3. In BAL Season 2, they finished number 2. They made it to the finals. In BAL Season 3, they made it to 4th place. And in BAL Season 4, they won the championship. So the Petro de Luanda team, they just had championship. It was a championship or bust season for in every single season. Season 2 was so underwhelming because they lost to the US Monastir team. I must say it was so heartbreaking to see them lose, because everything just showed that Petro de Luanda just needed to win. But given like the way they won this championship, it was something that needed to happen, because Petro de Luanda are the first country in BAL history in Sub-Saharan Africa to win the BL championship. Because in the previous years, you have seen North African teams dominate. In the first ever season, we had Zamalek from Egypt. They won the BAL championship. US Monastir team, they won in BAL Season 2, representing Tunisia. And in Season 3, had the Alali team from Egypt. They went ahead and won it in their first try. And I must say, it was so... at some point, you could just say, when will that cycle break? So Angola were that team, and they always had that roster, and they always had that run in them to go ahead and win it, and they just went ahead and did it. So I was just happy to see that, and that's just a rundown on BAL Season 4. I must say, I just had at the time of my life, especially recording those videos. And with this one, I just said, let me just bring out this last video. I know I'm going to make a couple of BAL videos just trying to just document the journey of how these teams managed to pull it off. Those ones, I'll just put them for a later date. But this one, I just said, let me just get it out there, because I must say, it was just awesome. And it was just something great to see. And hopefully the BL can be able to fix up a couple of things for BAL Season 5, because, man, they made a couple of changes and they were good. The arenas were just getting full. A lot of people, especially they were tuning in for playoff games. And the home teams and the home crowds, they were filling up the gyms when they're not even the gyms. They were filling up the arenas when their home teams played. So that is something that I really liked. And when the games happened in the playoffs in Rwanda, a lot of people are tuning into every single game, and no game recorded less than 2,000, if I'm not wrong, because a lot of times I saw a lot of people turning up to watch the game. But anyway, it is what it is. So if you guys like the video, make sure you leave your feedback down in the comments. What you think about BAL Season 4. I had a lot of time. I just had a lot of fun and enjoyed this. It was the best time covering African basketball, because as we wait for the Olympics to see how South Sudan is going to fare, especially being pulled to in the same group as Team USA, this was that period where we just needed to see some African basketball, especially coming off February, where we saw the FIBA AfroBasket qualifiers window open up. So I was just waiting to see what African basketball is gonna give us. So anyway, it is what it is. So if you guys like the video, like, share, subscribe to the channel. I'm gonna see you guys in the next one. Peace out.